it's easy to think that, okay, water is free and I don't need to take care of it. As a global society, we have taken water for granted, and that has to stop.
Hello and welcome to GZERO World. I'm Ian Bremmer, and today we are talking about something none of us can live without, but billions take for granted. Water. Clean water for drinking, for cooking, for living our daily lives. It's at risk in many parts of the world, including right here in the United States. We're going to help you understand the growing crisis of water stress and what it means for all of us. And I'm talking with Gilbert Houngbo. He is the chairman of UN Water. Don't worry, I've also got your puppet regime.
I would like to report a missing package.
What was in the package?
Facial hair comb and paper towel dispenser.
But first, think fast. How many oceans are there on Earth? Take a moment. It's been a while since your SATs. The answer is 1. Now, it does have a different name depending on where you are geographically, Pacific, Atlantic, Indian, you get it. But the planet is covered by one massive body of water, totals 71% of Earth's surface. The ocean also represents 96% of all the water on Earth, and that leaves a comparatively small amount of fresh water that we need to survive for a pretty big number of human beings. In roughly the last 100 years, fresh water use has more than quadrupled. Now sure, you're thinking the population grew, the global economy grew, and that is of course true, which means we use more water. The problem is nobody ever said that there is more water. Increased demand was already depleting rivers and lakes and reservoirs at an alarming rate. And climate change and warming global temperatures are only making matters worse. Droughts like the one California endured, the worst in its recorded history, are happening around the world. And while bands of heavy storms have helped matters in the short term, the risk of drought impacting lives and industry is far from over. The picture in poorer nations is, of course, much more challenging. UNICEF reports that as many as 4 billion people, half the world's population, experience at least a month of severe water scarcity every year. 2 billion live in areas where the water supply is inadequate all year round, and water scarcity could drive as many as 700 million people to migrate by 2030. Water, something we've taken for granted for generations, and certainly here in the United States, may well become one of the most precious and precarious of resources. Scarcity is already leading to increases in acute hunger, displacement of millions, and steep rises in regional conflict. UN member states recently announced a historic treaty to protect 30% of ocean areas by 2030. That move could make a big impact on environmental protection and for preservation of biodiversity, and that is important. But scientists say much more action is needed for that 4% of fresh water we need to live. And right now, we're going through it, well, like water. I'm going through all that and more with Gilbert Houngbo, Chair of UN Water and former Prime Minister of Togo. Prime Minister Houngbo, thanks so much for joining us on GZERO World.
Thank you so much for having me in your show.
So I thought I'd start with some good news, which of course is this effort that you've put so much time into. It's called the Treaty on the High Seas that I've just seen announced, that apparently we're talking about, 30% of international waters will be protected for biodiversity. That, given that we've never had an international agreement before, that sounds like some progress. So can you walk us through a little bit on what this treaty is meant to accomplish?
I mean, first of all, you have to understand that the problematic on water is so complex. Now, more and more, what we're trying to is to bring everybody, all countries, to really adhere to the same way of addressing the same issue that we are facing, while respecting the national circumstances that every government has to observe. And you have to look at that from a different dimension. And one important one is, water can be used for peace. At the same time, water can be a security issue between countries. So we need to keep in mind that A major challenge that we still have is the basic access to drinkable water and sanitation. Since 2015, we have made some progress. We have, in the last 8 years or 7-8 years, 600 million people that now have access to drinkable water services. At the same time, we need to keep in mind that we have 2 billion of people that still don't.
Now, lack of access to clean water, to drinkable water, how much of that is bad governance? How much of that is lack of resource? Where do you see the biggest challenges in the coming 5-10 years that you're trying to address?
I think we have a mix of both. Bad management or bad long-term planning is quite a serious issue. Not only planning for water, but also planning for climate change. As a global society, we have taken water for granted, and that has to stop. Water has to become everyone's business, and therefore the investment in water-related infrastructure for us is key. So we found ourselves kind of in the same storm, but not necessarily in the same boat. So it's going to be very, very important for us to use that water as a cross-cutting, let me put it this way, investment. In almost every region, you have countries that are having water stress. What makes it even worse is when you bring the agriculture dimension. We know that agriculture is more or less 75% the use of water. So addressing the issue of practices, talking again about management or governance, improving practices in agriculture and making the agriculture practices climate friendly, climate sensitive, and use of technology will help us, particularly in countries that are water stressed.
So when I look at Yemen, which has virtually no water access as a country itself, you've got a cholera outbreaks and other significant disease because you don't have proper sanitation and water. How do we go about, I mean, if the water's not there, how are we going about addressing that? What does it mean to fix the water problem for a country like Yemen? How do you do that?
A country like Yemen, you really have to go with a multi-pronged approach. So we need to look, first of all, you can look at desalination, because at least Yemen, you have the sea to desalinate it. I can talk later on Somaliland in Ethiopia, where you don't even have the access to the sea. Infrastructure is going to be key in Yemen. Investment in infrastructure and technology, and you will have to consider desalination, but that is expensive. This is where also official development cooperation comes to play. Sometimes it's true, when you look at it, it's kind of, okay, where do we start? But you just need to invest at the same time in a different dimension.
So how do you even measure success? We kind of all know, like 1.5 degrees centigrade global warming, if we get past that, we've got serious problems. Everyone can watch that. Everyone can monitor it. What do we do when it comes to global water? Are there metrics like that we can talk about that are easy to get people to understand?
Yeah, this is what the UN Water, which is a consortium of the 34 or 35 different UN agencies that are working one way or the other in water. We do have metrics like the number of the number of citizens that have access or not to drinkable water or to sanitation or the different type of component, and the reuse of water and different type of metrics. What is happening, of course, is more difficult than the climate change, the 1.5 degree you gave, because most of people, sometimes you might think that the major problems are in the big cities, but most of the poor people that are really suffering from water scarcity are in the rural area. And therefore, I must confess that the data and the quality of data is challenging on that. And what is also, the metrics is also important is how some of the nexus between water and climate change. For example, when you look at some of the big rivers, you know, some of them are losing 10%, 20%, you know, each year or some years of their reserve. And the ability to measure that and more using artificial intelligence is also going to help us.
And where do you see, I mean, given AI breakthroughs have been extraordinary in being able to assess very accurately, monitor, censor, you know, sort of availability of resource and avoid waste, where do you think that's going to have the biggest impact in the water crisis in the next 5-10 years?
I think it's in agriculture. And the amount of water that is necessary and the ability to reuse the waste water. And the more technology AI also will, particularly the cost of the technology will go down, and to help increase the basic transformation of the agriculture production, that will help reducing the global waste, loss and waste. And you see the loss and waste in agriculture is around 30-35% of product, and that will also help us to reduce the amount of water needed.
I want to ask you another climate-related question, because of course part of the reason why we've gotten ourselves in this fix of climate change is that people have treated carbon emissions as free, as costless. It's not a part of the problem. Part of the reason that we've gotten into a water challenge is because people in industry treat water as free. So do we need to think about water as a global commodity? And if we did, what would the price be?
I mean, the price, if we didn't, the price would be what we're already feeling. I remember, and I'm an old man, but I remember my first year in university. That's where in the late 70s, early 80s, where we start saying that, you know, we have to start considering water as a good, as a public good. So which is first thing. Secondly, it is also important on one hand to make sure that while people have access to basic water services, we also take measure from a policy perspective, measure to avoid waste in the use of water. Because sometimes it's easy to think that, okay, water is free and I don't need to take care of it. The third dimension, which is linked, is how do we fight against pollution at the country level, at the community level, be it in large cities or small cities. We really need to really ensure that we minimize the risk of pollution of rivers.
Now, how do you think about privatization processes? We've seen in many cases, you know, where municipal plants suddenly are being taken over by companies. Is it driving more inequality? Is it creating efficiency and improving the water situation? I know there's not a one quick answer to that, but you see the entire range. Generally speaking, how's that been working?
I think well managed is something that I encourage, but well managed, because it depends. When you have in some countries, when the government, in terms of governance, is very well organized, then the water services can be led by the government, by the public sector. But at the same time, the policy, if well in place, and if it's privatized should not mean automatically that the prices are going up. That's where I think the government had to set up the regulatory environment to ensure, for example, something that is very close to my heart, that the population that are at risk of being left behind, that are vulnerable, they still have that minimum quantity of water a month that is free or at a very, very, very cheap cost. Then privatization also means that the government put in place means to control, to supervise, and to inspect the quality of water, and to ensure that the private company adhere to the agreed way forward and the existing policy. So I think well managed is not necessarily a bad thing.
So when you look out in the next, let's say, 10, 20 years, do you think, I mean, the way that we presently use water as consumers, are we going to be able to maintain most of that use looking forward? I mean, when I look at climate change, it does make me wonder about to what extent your job is doable long term.
No, I'm positive on medium long term that progressively our habits, our way of life, we will adjust. And when you think about it, we have been adjusting on that. You know, I'm sure in the morning before you shave, you want to make sure that you don't let just the water running per se. And 20 years ago or so, maybe we don't even think about that. The other thing with I'm very confident also that with IoT, Internet of Things, it will also help us have again what we said about agriculture, kind of knowing the quantity you need in our household daily management. The IoT, I believe, is going to also be helpful for us to change our habit and also the consumption.
Prime Minister Houngbo, thank you so much for the work you're doing, and I appreciate you joining us today on GZERO World.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. Much appreciated.
And before we go, a special delivery for Iran's Supreme Leader didn't show up, or so he thinks. Roll that tape.
Good evening. Some experts say Iran has been trying to get around sanctions in a way you will not believe.
Hello, customer service. With whom do I have the pleasure of speaking?
Yes, hi, this is Ayatollah Ali. This is Al, calling from Iowa. Persia, Iowa. I would like to report a missing package.
What was in the package?
What? It's sensitive. It was like facial hair comb and paper towel dispenser and highly specialized integrated microchip circuits. What I usually order.
Oh, sir, my records show your package was delivered yesterday.
Yesterday? That's a lie. Why must you turn this call into a house of lies?
Please hold. Hey, Cheryl! I'm stuck on the crossword. What's a 5-letter word for, make off like a blink in the night? Sir, thank you for holding. Your package was delivered yesterday at 3:39 p.m.
Are you calling me a liar? Do you know who I am? I am the supreme leader of Iowa.
That's so great, sir. Is there anything else I can help you with?
You can find my package. Let me speak to the manager.
Yes, please hold. Ah, thief! Thief!
What?
Thief. Oh, sorry. I thought you were on hold. Sir, have you looked at your doorbell cam? Maybe someone took the package.
Oh, now you're telling me how to do surveillance? I'll have you know that. Wait. Oh, the doorbell cam. Yes, let me see this doorbell cam.
Okay, let's see here. Microchips, check.
Vladimir Putin? Can't he evade sanctions on his own? That little son of a...
What? He ordered Eat, Pray, Love. What the heck?
That's our show this week. Come back next week, and if you like what you see, or even if you don't, but you want something sparkling and refreshing like me, take a minute to sign up for our most excellent morning newsletter. It's called GZERO Daily.